Good morning. We are very pleased to meet you and a bit nervous too.
We have prepared some questions and different topics for you.
Who is nervous? No one. Perfect. Okay, so you have questions,
Yes.
and hopefully we will have answers.
But possibly we may have questions as well.
But maybe before we start, I will introduce myself. I'm Franz Vieböck from Autriche.
I'm Bill MacArthur from the United States.
And now please go ahead with your question. Who is first?
Did you want to become an astronaut?
How was that?
Since when did you want to become an astronaut?
Okay, when I was 9 years old, I was watching TV and I saw Neil Armstrong, the first human walking on the moon. And when I saw this, I said, oh, this is cool, flying in a rocket, you know, I want to do this. But this was a dream, you know, like many young people have. When I was then a little bit older, after my university, I really wanted to become an astronaut.
So when I was Franz's age, now I was actually 18 years old when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. I was 10 years old when Yuri Gagarin flew, almost 11 years old. Yuri Gagarin, a Russian cosmonaut, was the first person to fly in space. But when I was Franz's age, I wanted to be an American soldier because that's what my father was. And so I did that, and then many years later, as an American Army helicopter pilot, I learned that not only could Air Force, Navy, and Navy jet pilots be astronauts, but Army helicopter pilots could be. And so I then asked NASA 7 times if I could be an astronaut, and finally they said yes.
What equipment do you use?
What equipment do we use? Rockets. Oh, space stations. Oh, spacesuits.
There is a lot of equipment we use to get into space and to work in space. First, you need a rocket to get into space. And the rocket is accelerating you, and you will fly in space very fast. 28,000 kilometers per hour, or 7 kilometers per second. In 1 second, 7 kilometers. So it's very, very fast. And in order to become so fast, you need rockets. In space, there is no air to breathe. It's vacuum. So you need a spacesuit when you are in space, or in a space station you have air to breathe. But outside the space station, there is no air to breathe. So you need vacuum. In space, you have 0 G. You are weightless. You're floating. So to live in space and to work in space, you also have different equipment. Life is very different in space. You want to add something?
Computers. Goodness. The most important equipment, I think, in space is a pair of scissors. Do you know why scissors might be so important in space?
understand scissors. The scissors.
You need them to open your food.
How do you feel before going to space?
How do you feel before going to space? Well, you know, when you go into space, you are put on the top of a rocket, and behind or underneath you there is several hundreds tons of explosive stuff, of fuel. And this is burning through the jets, hopefully controlled. And it's accelerating you. So it's a very dangerous adventure. And I told you before, in space is vacuum. If something happens, there's no air to breathe. So space flight is very dangerous. That's why you have to train a lot and prepare a lot to fly into space. And before a launch, you are very focused, very concentrated. And during the launch, you are watching the systems and make sure everything is working properly.
Excited. You're going to fly in space, and you're going to go really, really fast, and you're going to float, and you're going to see the Earth, and the Earth is spectacular from space. And so I don't think so much about the danger, but I think very much about the adventure and being prepared just in case there's a problem.
If one of you gets sick, what do you do?
This is a very good question. First of all, you try not to become sick. So how do you do that? You try to stay healthy and fit. You eat properly, you make exercise. So you try to stay fit. Because when you are up in space, there is maybe a doctor who is a colleague from you, but there is no hospital, there is no emergency room. So you have to help yourself. Or hopefully together with a colleague, you can help yourself. And if you really get a serious disease and a serious problem, then you have to come down to the ground, which did happen already, but this is something you really try to avoid, because it's very expensive. You know, to come down, going up is very expensive.
Very expensive. Very expensive.
Russia.
Yeah.
It's happened 2 times in Russia.
In Russia 2
Soviet
times.
Union.
And you have also a permanent or a regular contact with doctors on the ground. And here is a doctor. He was helping the French astronauts in space. Maybe you explain it a little.
Donc, moi j'ai été médecin des astronautes pendant 35 ans. Je les ai sélectionnés, je les ai accompagnés des vols. J'ai même, comme je parle russe, j'ai même accompagné des astronautes européens.
In English, in English.
No, no. I'm enjoying trying to follow the
I
French.
was able to speak Russian, so I have been involved in the flight of Thomas Reiter. It was a long flight on the Mir station.
You're a Mir 95?
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, I remember you. And after the last flight was in 1990, it was Jean-Pierre Agnoret's husband of Claudie Agnoret. And he flown during 6 months also on Mir station. After I have stopped, I just keep some position. I am a chairman of the medical board where we are looking at the medical fitness and so on of the astronaut, and we decide in a common way with Russian, with American, with big participation of American. We decide if an astronaut can go to fly or not go to fly for medical reasons. Vous avez compris? Je vais passer un mot de votre prof d'anglais. Il faut que vous parliez anglais couramment pour devenir astronaute. They have to speak English fluently to become an astronaut. It's mandatory. Mandatory.
And-
Obligatoire.
That's right, and it is mandatory that astronauts speak English and Russian.
Now, even Russian.
Yeah.
But if you don't speak Russian at the beginning, they teach you, and you are trained to speak Russian. But for Americans that are not so familiar to learn foreign language, it has been a serious challenge to learn Russian. I remember the first astronaut in Star City were completely lost at this time.
Going tired?
What studies do we need to become an astronaut?
What studies?
Yes.
Okay. I would say there is many studies to choose from. Everything related to science, to math, biology, medicine, physics, chemistry, engineering, aerospace engineering, geography. Learning of old Greek language probably will not help.
Vous avez compris, apprendre le grec ancien, ça vous aidera pas beaucoup.
And this is not really education from a classroom, but space exploration is an international effort. Many countries work together to fly in space. And so it is very important to learn the cultures of other countries. So I spent 6 months on board the space station with only one other person, a Russian. And so one of the joys of flying on that mission was really learning Russian culture and spending time with Valery in Russia and visiting his house and visiting his family and traveling in Russia together and doing the same when he was in America.
You know, it is not so important what you study. It is important that you study, and that you keep learning, and that you keep an interest in exploring, in learning many new things. This is important.
Vous avez compris là? Le plus important, c'est que vous restiez toujours à apprendre, vous ayez une volonté d'apprendre. Finalement, la spécialité, Franz vous dit, c'est pas si important, mais il faut que vous gardiez cette envie d'apprendre. Et c'est vrai que quand on devient astronaute, vous continuez à apprendre, et beaucoup de choses, Donc il faut que vous ayez cette envie de continuer à apprendre, c'est très important. Voilà, c'était le message de Franz.
Next question.
How do you wash your clothes in the shuttle?
Okay. Since I did not wash my clothes,
I just love that question.
I did not wash my clothes. Maybe Bill has a better answer.
We do not have equipment to wash clothes, and so you would wear clothes, and usually in space station you would wear the same clothes for 2, maybe 3 days, and then you would throw them away. You would put them in the trash, and eventually they would leave the space station, and they would burn going back into the Earth's atmosphere. I had one shirt that I used for sport on the space station, and inside the cloth, the fabric, was silver. so that it wouldn't smell bad. I wore that shirt for a month.
Vous avez compris, à bord de la station, on garde tout. Mais lui avait gardé un sweatshirt qu'il utilisait pour le sport, qui était complètement imbibé de transpiration et qu'il a gardé un mois. Et il dit que ça sentait pas très lourd.
Mais ce t-shirt avait une particularité, pour pouvoir le garder pendant un mois.
Voilà.
Est-ce que quelqu'un a compris le mot silver? Silver, c'est quoi?
C'est l'argent,
très
c'est
bien.
le sel
Il y
d'argent.
avait de l'argent dedans, et du coup, ça lui a permis de le porter pendant un mois.
C'est un désinfectant l'argent. Et ils avaient mélangé au t-shirt, c'est des new techniques de tissu qui permettent de garder plus longtemps des vêtements. Et Bill a utilisé ce type de t-shirt.
And remember, all the water on space station must come from the Earth. And so we would not want to use water to wash clothes, although we can take our water when it is dirty, or we can even take urine from the body, and we can purify it and make it so clean that astronauts can drink it.
Vous avez compris, à l'heure actuelle, à bord de la station internationale, il y a un système de recyclage où ils prennent même l'urine et qui devient de l'eau potable. Ils le filtrent, ils le traitent, etc. Et à l'heure actuelle, je rajoute une précision, 95% de l'eau de la Space Station est recyclée. At the present time, 95% of the water in Space Station is recycled.
Recycling. So from 1 liter of urine, you get 0.7 liters, so 70% of water.
70%.
Go ahead.
What is your favorite hobby in the ISS?
Favorite hobby?
Favorite
Space
hobby?
station.
Yeah. Let me think. I was only flying a short duration flight for 8 days. But I like music, and I also play piano. And there is a famous French astronaut, Jean-Luc Chrétien, who flew several years before me to the space station Mir, and he brought a little keyboard, and I was also playing a little music. That was my hobby.
My hobby, I had two hobbies. One was taking pictures of the Earth. I think I did not take very many compared to other astronauts. I think I only took 23,000 pictures. But I also enjoyed talking on a special radio. It's called amateur radio, and I could talk to anyone on the Earth who had the same type of radio. I talked to someone. How many continents are there? 7, yes. I talked to someone on every continent: Europe, Asia, Australia, North America, South America, the Antarctic. This one somewhere. Well, and so
Africa.
Africa, and so I talked to over 100 countries, and so it was. I really enjoyed talking to people who weren't astronauts, were not in mission control, and it was very exciting.
You talked to
Je vais vous expliquer, là, c'est des radioamateurs, c'est des réseaux. Donc vous avez vu, là, il y a des gens qui ont des antennes très grandes au-dessus de leur maison. Et à la bord de la station, il y a des appareils qui permettent, quand on passe juste au-dessus de lui, pendant quelques minutes, de parler avec eux. Et il y a des astronautes qui sont en contact en dehors des lignes officielles de communication entre la station et le sol, qui sont en contact avec les astronautes qui sont en vol. Et Bill a utilisé beaucoup ces links avec des radios amateurs et généralement ils se connaissent bien et souvent on apprend par des radios amateurs des nouvelles sur la station, des choses qui n'ont pas été dites sur le truc. Et c'est très utilisé en fait. Voilà. C'est un hobby, hein, c'est un hobby à bord. Hein. Ils ne sont pas obligés de le faire. You have not to be involved in radio amateur business. It is because it is your hobby.
So next question.
Are there germs in space?
Germs.
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 Of course there are germs in space.
We take them.
It's
They go up with us.
yeah. Go ahead.
Which is why it is very important for people to be healthy when they go into space, because all people have some germs, and we try to keep the space station very clean, but we also will take samples, and we will then try to see if there are harmful germs growing. But you know, when we get sick, when we as humans get sick, it normally is because we got a germ from someone else. So if you aren't sick when you get to the space station, and for my mission, we had 6 months where only Valerie and I were on the space station, and because there were no other people, no one brought germs that would make us sick, and so it worked very well. We just tried a new experiment on space station in which we have a little device in which it can determine the DNA of a sample. And so we hope that will allow astronauts in the future to determine if there are harmful germs on the space station.
DNA, ça ressemble à quoi? DNA, c'est
L'ADN. C'est l'ADN. Donc à bord, là, c'est une expérience qui aura des applications sur Terre. Hein. Ils ont à l'heure actuelle à bord de la station des séquenceurs, ça s'appelle de ADN, hein, donc des séquenceurs de gènes, qui permet d'identifier immédiatement s'il y a un germe dangereux, harmful, hein, ça veut dire dangereux à bord, et qui permettra de... Et ça aura des retombées terrestres, vous connaîtrez ça, hein, un jour chez vous, vous aurez un appareil qui vous permettra de savoir si vous avez des germes particulièrement... c'est des technos qui ont été mis au point par la NASA et qui, à mon avis, auront beaucoup de retombées, de spin-off, comme disaient les Américains.
Would you like to visit another planet? Which one?
Yes, of course. Who from you would like to visit another planet?
Yeah.
Qui d'entre vous veut visiter notre planète?
1, 2, huh? Huh? Okay, see?
Très bon.
Good.
So while I would like to visit another planet, I would be happier for one of you to visit another planet. We think maybe in 20 years, the first people will fly to Mars. And that means, as Franz has told me, that someone who is in school today, like yourselves, may be one of the first people to go to Mars.
Vous avez compris, hein? Donc c'est Mars, et ils disent que l'un d'entre vous peut peut-être aller sur Mars.
And if you would like to go to Mars, study hard and learn as much as you can while you're in school.
Et si vous voulez aller sur Mars, travaillez bien et continuez à apprendre pendant longtemps, ce qui est vrai.
What is the most difficult to become an astronaut?
What is the most difficult? Well, to become an astronaut, you know, you have to apply, and then there is many young people who want to become an astronaut. So you have to go through this selection process, and that means you have to be healthy, you have to be you know, somehow smart and not mentally sick, and you have to have luck also, till you finally are selected to become an astronaut. And then you have the training. And the training takes a long time, because you have to learn about the rocket, about the space station, about space, navigation in space, how you fly in space. And then you have to learn all the experiments you're doing in space. There's a lot of learning, a lot of training. And for me, almost the hardest was the training. The flight was then very, almost relaxing, enjoyable.
Franz said, you need a little luck. Earlier this year, NASA selected 12 new astronauts. 18,000 people this year asked to be one of those 12 people.
Vous avez compris cette statistique?
18 000 candidats.
Et ils en ont pris combien? Training. This is why school is good training. See? That's what
So when you are an adult, you are always in, especially as an astronaut, you are always in school. But we call it training.
How do you go to the toilet in the ISS?
Carefully. So the human body changes some in space, but we are still physically the same. And so if we think about how a toilet works on the ground, you either sit on the toilet and your solid waste goes into the toilet, or, you know, for young men, maybe you stand there to urinate. And gravity takes the liquid or solid waste into the toilet. Well, gravity is not going to do that in space. But the toilet looks a little bit like a toilet on the ground. There's just no water in it. Instead, you must take an electrical switch and turn the toilet on, and then you hear a sound. It sounds like a vacuum cleaner. And then there is a tube, a hose. It looks very much like a vacuum cleaner hose.
Aspirateur.
And so you put your hand over the end and you make sure air is going into the hose. And so for liquid waste, you urinate into a plastic funnel, and the air carries the liquid waste into a machine under the floor, which spins around, and the liquid waste goes out and is collected in an aluminum tank, and the air goes through a filter to clean it and remove any odor, and then comes back into the cabin.
Tu vois, c'est une bonne question parce que la réponse est très technique. L'air accompagne le produit et puis ça va dans un bidon en aluminium.
So for solid waste, when you sit, you feel the air go around your legs, and the solid waste then goes into another cylinder, a bucket, a little tank, and when it is filled, you have a top that bolts down, and you go put it in your resupply ship, which is later going to start back to Earth and burn in the atmosphere.
Vous avez compris, pour les déchets solides, donc ils enferment ça dans un conteneur truc qui est ensuite ramené sur Terre. Pour l'instant, c'est pas recyclé, les solides à bord de la Space Station ne sont pas recyclés. L'eau est recyclée, hein, les urines sont recyclées. Il y en a pour projet, vous savez qu'il y a des cultures qui sont faites à bord. Il y a une expérience qui s'appelle VG, Vegetables, ils font pousser. Et on va essayer de recycler même les déchets solides des hommes, des excréments. Mais c'est step by step. Les déchets. Donc ils les mettent, tu sais, il y a des cargos qui viennent délivrer, il y a les Progress, il y a maintenant les Dragons, les capsules de Dragon, et qui sont déorbitées. Et quand elles sont déorbitées, on ne pilote pas la déorbitation, il y a un plasma qui monte à plus de 2000 degrés et tout brûle. Et ça fait une étoile filante. Et au sol, il tombe rien, il tombe des petites cendres, rien du tout, on ne voit plus. Et c'est brûlé. Et à l'heure actuelle, alors il y a une capsule qui est capable de ramener quelques kilogrammes au sol à l'heure actuelle. C'est une version de Dragon. Et là, c'est plus compliqué. Donc après la phase plasmatique, il faut ouvrir un parachute et tout, et ça tombe dans l'eau. Et là, on vient les récupérer. Ben, généralement, ça ne pollue pas parce qu'on les cherche. On ne les laisse pas flotter dans l'eau. Il y a du monde pour les récupérer parce qu'en fait, on les suit et on sait exactement où ils vont. Et ce n'est pas des grosses trucs, c'est tout petit.
Do you like the food in the ISS?
Yes. Yes. You know, whenever you work hard, you become hungry and you like to eat. So food is good up there. It's not as good as here, but it's good. Right?
It is. I was really fortunate that about half of my food came from Russia and half came from the United States. And so I had much choice, many different kinds of food. I really liked much of the Russian food. There was some Russian food I didn't like so much. I liked most of the American food. There was some American food I did not like so much. And so it's not like my mother said you have to eat everything. I only ate what I wanted to eat.
Those times seem more or less long in space.
Does time seem more or less when you are in space? Well, for me, time was much too short in space. I would have liked to stay much longer. And since I was on a short flight, your time, every minute is planned and scheduled to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that. So you are really working on a very tight schedule, and time is not enough.
I flew on the space shuttle 3 times, and the missions were between 1 week and 2 weeks long. And the time, we were so busy, the time seemed very short. And at the end of the mission, I wanted to stay in space longer. And so, when NASA asked if I wanted to fly on the International Space Station, oh yes, this was 6 months long. And the time did seem still to go by very quickly. Not so quickly as on the shuttle, but still very quickly. However, at the end of 6 months, I was happy to go home.
How do you communicate with your family?
Okay. Well, I was flying in 1991, so 26 years ago. There was no internet, there was no Skype, no WhatsApp. So I had the opportunity or the pleasure that the mission control and the Austrian, let's say, government were setting up a video direct conference with a museum in Austria, and there was the Austrian president, and they invited my wife to also be there, and so I was able to communicate with direct video link with my wife. Nowadays it's very different, probably.
It is very, very different now. And as we know, communications technology advances very, very quickly. And so on ISS today, we have internet protocol telephones. And so I could put on a headset with a microphone, start software on my laptop on the space station, and call any telephone number in the world. And so I called, I have 2 daughters, and I called either my wife or one of my daughters every day. On Sunday, the ground would set up a video conference, and so I would have a little video window on my computer, and I would be able to talk to my wife and my daughters. They thought I talked much too much, and they told me when I got back that if I called them on the telephone and they thought I was talking too long, they would go, "Dad, the connection is bad. Call Mom."
That's good.
Vous avez bien compris, à l'heure actuelle, ça a changé. C'est 2 époques. Hein. L'époque de France, il y avait très peu de communication, et l'époque de Bill, maintenant, il peut appeler un peu comme il veut, quand il veut, mais par contre, on ne peut pas l'appeler. It's not possible to call you
That's correct.
Freely to join the station. Donc, n'essayez pas d'appeler des astronautes à la station, vous n'avez pas leur numéro.
My wife works for NASA also, and so the telephone technician made her phone for the caller ID. When I would call her at work, it would say International Space Station.
Donc là, un technicien, la femme de Bill travaille à la NASA, lui avait arrangé sur son écran un warning qui lui disait il y a Bill qui essaie de t'appeler.
What are the usual feelings when astronauts come back to talk?
Okay, well, you know, you have to consider when you are in space, you're floating, you don't need your muscles. You are not walking, you don't need the muscles in your legs. When you're moving in space, you just push yourself from here and you're floating over there. So you're not running, the muscles are not working. So you have to exercise in space to keep your muscles strong. And when you come back to Earth, out of a sudden you feel gravity again. You feel, this is pushing you down. And one effect of zero gravity, when you come back to gravity, is that you get a little dizzy. A little dizzy, or you have a hard time to walk straight. You go very focused. And so it takes a few hours, a few days, till you get used again to walk here on the ground.
Do you often go out of the ISS when up in space?
That's him to answer.
So Valeria and I went out outside ISS twice, We did one, we call these spacewalks. We did one in the American spacesuit, and then we did another in the Russian spacesuit. We also disconnected our Soyuz spacecraft from the space station and moved to a different part of the space station. So we spent a surprising amount of time outside the space station. And these were very exciting things to do.
How do you take a shower in space?
How do you take a shower in space?
Do you like to take showers?
Est-ce que tu aimes prendre des douches? It depends.
It depends.
So most of the time, yes.
Okay, well,
Okay,
you'll like
good.
this answer.
Well, when you're in space, you have zero gravity. Everything is floating. So when you turn on the shower, water comes out, but then water is floating. And the water does not know up or down. And you don't know up or down, because in space you don't feel up or down. You're floating. So the water does not know it's coming out from the shower, that it should go on your body, run down and disappear down there. It starts floating. So you cannot use a shower. Okay? It's not possible. They have not figured out yet a good way how to take a shower. So what you do to clean yourself is you have towels, wet towels, and you clean yourself.
Ils ont essayé de faire des showers, des douches. Skylab, I think,
Yes,
during
yes,
Skylab, they
yes.
have an attempt to develop a new system, but
It doesn't work.
not at all convenient.
But it has, but to really work, it could not leak any, and so of course it does. And
C'était pas possible. Donc maintenant, ils se servent de micro-ondes de serviette.
Bonne vieille méthode.
You know, it's very interesting when you open the water, you can hold your hand and the water is running here, and then you have like a big bubble of water here. It's not running or not washing, you know, you can hold it here and then let it go and it's floating. It's very funny, water in space.
What do you like the least in the ESS?
The least, so not at all. I have one too. You go ahead.
so, how difficult it is to keep small objects in a bag for them to stay in the bag. And so I had one task where they wanted me to take 2 bags which had toothbrushes, toothpaste, razors, soap in it, and they wanted me to take everything out, count all the toothbrushes, and then put them all in the same bag. And so every time I would open one bag and I would take a toothbrush, 4 toothbrushes would float out. And so I thought that was not there were things I would have preferred to do that day. Things that would have been more fun that day.
Vous avez bien compris, là? Donc il a raconté que ils avaient des sacs avec leur pâte dentifrice, des brosses à dents, des savons. Et on lui a demandé de vérifier, de le mettre dans la queue. Et chaque fois qu'il prenait une brosse à dents, tout partait. Et en fait, c'était un mauvais moment pour lui. C'était ce genre de manipulation. Ça a souvent été rapporté, le fait de mettre dans des sacs, c'est pas du tout commode dans l'espace.
Thank you so much for your answers. This was a good experience.
Well, it's been a fun experience for us as well.
Alors,
Thank you.
on va marcher.